Now, of course, the story again dominating the headlines, the airways, of course, the Tory party conference over in Manchester, its final day today. And Rishi Sunak, of course, dominating the stages. We've just been hearing his speech for about an hour. Many people are making lots of kind of noise about how his speech was actually introduced. I'll show you who introduced him.
Rishi and I are each other's best friends. We're one team, and I could not imagine being anywhere else but here today.
Yeah, there you go. Very sweet. That was his wife. She took to the stage. She gave quite the performance, actually, saying about, as you just heard it, her best friend and talking about how they've met and their daughters and their family and the teamwork and all the rest of it. Very fascinating stuff. But has it got any place on a political stage? You tell me. Richard, what do you make to that?
Actually, I thought it was great. I thought it shows that they're a strong team. And look, being in politics is really difficult. It's brutal, it's tough. And having someone, a close partner by your side, I thought it showed real strength and all credit to it. It's not easy going up on a stage like that. I thought it was a good opener, good intro for him. And, yeah, all credit to him.
Warm words from Richard. Peter, do you agree with that?
I quite like it because all politicians are human beings and we can argue about the policy and the substance that we're going to do in a moment, but to just remind everyone listening at home, if there is anyone listening at home, that these are human beings.
What do you mean, if there's anyone listening?
Peter, that's outrageous.
Peter,
Tory conference.
We are one of the fastest-growing programmes on this network.
That was a reference to Tory conference.
Off with his head. Go on.
That was a reference to Tory conference, not to your show. So I think it's a good thing because it shows the human side of anyone. And, we'll argue about the policies, but politicians do get terrible abuse. But the point I'd make is actually the spouse, whether male or female, tends to come on stage when the leader is losing or behind in the polls. And I think that's...
Gordon Brown's wife, she did the same.
And she did great. She did great. And I think Theresa May's husband, Philip May, made one or two interventions. I can't remember if they were at a party conference. But it's generally a sign when a leader's on the back foot.
Well, again, I am a lone voice on this panel because I thought it was very sweet and it's wonderful to have a supportive partner. And yes, if you're in a team and all the rest of it. But I personally thought it was a little bit weird. Your wife kind of having to do this talk for you. I just thought it was it's like your mum going into school and I don't know, sticking up for you because you're not doing a good job or something. I personally thought it was a little bit odd. But you can be the final judge of that. Let's get into the main thrust of it, though, because one of the key things that I found fascinating today from Rishi's actual speech was the state of the political system in this country. Let's listen.
The feeling that Westminster is a broken system, and the same goes for Holyrood, Cardiff Bay and Stormont. It isn't anger. It's an exhaustion with politics. In particular, politicians saying things and then nothing ever changing. And you know what? People are right.
Again, I have a puzzled look on my face because sometimes when I'm listening to the stages today and previous days on the Tory party conference, I do find myself asking the same question. But you've been in power for the last, 13 years? And some people on these stages over the last couple of days have been talking as though they've literally only just walked to that stage and grasped power for the first time. And yes, I know Rishi's only just become Prime Minister, but notwithstanding that, the Tories have had the control for a decade plus. Anyway, do you think the political system is broken?
Yeah, I do. And I think but it is laughable that it comes from a Conservative leader. Their party's been in charge for 13 years. He's been in the cabinet for about 3.5 years and been responsible for much of the catastrophe that we now face. What we need actually is proportional representation so that every vote counts, every vote's equal, and then you get far more democratic engagement. That's the real reason that politics is so broken in this country, because for too many people, their vote doesn't count, they don't get listened to. You've got in this two-party system, you've got too many safe seats, and there's a lack of competition, a lack of new entrants. And I think that's what the majority of the country wants, and I think we should have a referendum on PR as soon as possible.
I shall come back to you on that. But, Peter, do you agree?
I think it shows the difficulties of running as a change candidate when you've been in government for so long. And Rishi Sunak's very young, he's very energetic and he's quite intelligent. But it's the bind that will be above and beyond party conference in the year before the election, where he's saying, I'm all about changing the country. But every time he mentions that, a journalist or someone on the doorstep will say, here are the things that your government has done I don't agree with. And that's why he's ended up with the policies of today, which are kind of, they're tweaks or cancellations around HS2 and A-levels. They're not radical reforming gestures. And he said, politics is broken. Well, I mean, that's a bit of an empty statement. But he didn't say how he'd fix it.
This PR thing, I mean, we had a referendum in 2011 and it was, I think I've got the stats here actually, in terms of who voted and the outcome. The final result was yes to PR. We only got 32%.
No, it was no to PR, so it was to keep the same.
Yeah, sorry.
System.
So, yeah. The yes vote was 32% and the no vote was 67.9%. So people overwhelmingly rejected proportional representation.
But that was a long time ago, Michelle. Politics and the country was in a very different place then, and it was a PR system that, frankly, I don't think people wanted either. And I think, frankly, if you've got a big question like that, every 15 years, you should re-ask the question. And I think that more and more people recognise that this two-party system that is supposed to bring us a strong, stable government has actually brought us exactly the opposite. It's brought us chaos, incompetent government, and what we need new entrants, we need far more people to get involved in the democratic. But here's the key thing.
But the pushback to that, people will be saying, well, you're talking about chaos. You're going to probably see more coalitions, probably more chaos under a PR system.
Almost every developed nation has some form of PR. The only other country in Europe that has first past the post, Belarus. It's not great company. And the average turnout under PR is 10% higher. That's another 3 million people in the UK that would feel it's worth getting involved in the democratic process. And I think all of us who support and treasure democracy, we should absolutely enhance that. And it encourages new ideas, new people, disruptors. And that's a good thing for democracy.
And you said, at the last Labour Party conference, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a motion put there and overwhelmingly, as I understand it, Labour members voted in favour of having PR. Was you one of them? Would you support that?
I think it's a bit of a quagmire. So, yeah, Labour leaderships have generally not been in favour of PR. And obviously, if you're one of the two biggest parties, you're running that party, you wouldn't want to let in, without wishing to be rude, the smaller guys over here, the fringe parties. But, yeah, Labour members are increasingly in favour of PR. But bear in mind, when we had the referendum, which was, I think, 11 or 12 years ago, that was not for pure PR. That was for a particular strand. And, without getting bogged down that now.
It was the alternative vote.
Exactly. It wasn't for pure PR. But I think it's worth having that debate, but not right now, because we got cost of living crisis, we got a war in Europe and record NHS waiting.
There's never a good time. You've got to challenge this stuff. And here's the thing about this, it'll always lead to coalition. Wales, devolved assembly, is elected under PR. Scotland, Holyrood, is elected under PR. You've had the SNP dominating for a decade. You've had Labour dominating for 20 years in Labour. So it doesn't necessarily need you. If that's what the people want, that's what they'll get. So actually, that completely trashes the idea that it'll always lead to coalitions.
Well, that's not quite right. Very briefly, in Scotland, the SNP rely on the support of the Greens to stay in power.
To a tiny degree, but they've controlled Holyrood for at least 10 years, if not 15. So I think that actually sort of just completely kiboshes the idea that it always leads to a coalition.
But is it ever really going to happen? Because say Labour win, before you've even won, in your manifesto, if you put PR, Labour surely would not benefit from that. If you have a PR referendum at the next election, so not the first one that you're going to get elected in the next one, Labour would lose seats to that, and so would the Tories.
Well, yeah, I'd be really surprised if it was in a Labour manifesto this time around. Say Labour did get elected, as you mentioned, the party members seem to be turning a bit more in favour of PR. Don't rely purely on conference, because that's a system of delegates. It's not hundreds of thousands of Labour members. But if Labour got into power, I think there'd be a big internal debate about PR, and it's possible it might 4 years down the track pop up in a manifesto. But don't expect to see a commitment in the next 12 months. I'd be amazed if there was.
But that's what I mean. So then how would that proposition
quite easily,
ever
because if Labour have a very small working majority, or if they have some form of coalition with another party, let's say, for example, the Lib Dems, it will be in the Lib Dems manifesto, in the same way it'll be in our manifesto. And then it's part of the negotiating leverage. And that's how the referendum came about last time, because the Lib Dems demanded it as part of the coalition with the Conservatives back in 2010.
You're very optimistic because I just...
You have to be optimistic to be in politics.
I'm just not sure that I can ever imagine a scenario because the two main people that could put that referendum to us, it is literally against their best interest to do that. So I know what you're saying about, oh yeah, you can have this coalition and all the rest of it, but maybe I'm being pessimistic. Also as well, he was not just talking about potential, well, he wasn't talking about PR at all, actually, as I was talking about that. And if we didn't go down the PR route, how else could you fix the political system in this country?
It's a really good question. And I think what people are sick and tired of, actually, is politicians standing up, say they're going to do something, and then not doing it. So the Tories have every manifesto for the last 13 years, they've said they're going to reduce immigration. And they've done exactly the opposite. And so people get more and more disheartened. That's a disaster for democracy, because people either give up voting, say it's not worthwhile, and that's an absolute tragedy. So, and take today, he's talked about changing the A-level system and T-levels. Look at the detail. 10 years down the track, he's going to be long gone. There's a complete abandonment of any ambition. If you want to do something, get on with it. Don't wait 10 years to change something.
Do you agree with that?
A-level reform is only for part of the United Kingdom, i.e. England only. I don't think it'll make much difference on the doorstep. It's baffling why it's 10 years' time, and I'm not sure it's going to change educational standards. And it goes back to I know you want to wrap up, but my first point, which is, where's the story from Rishi Sunak's speech? It's bits and bobs here and there that don't add up to very much.
Well, one of my viewers, James, has said, please can you ask Richard the following question? If he thinks we should re-ask the big questions like PR every 15 years, does he also apply that to EU membership? Does he think we should have another referendum on EU membership in 2031?
I would have no problem after 15 and 20 years, and as long as the job's been done properly in the interim, we would win it by an absolute landslide, Michelle, no doubt at all.
So if you do indeed get elected then, you will be campaigning for a second referendum in 2031?
First of all, we'll do Brexit properly, and then the country will be hugely grateful, and it just won't be an issue.